afternoon, everyone. Welcome to BUS Tesol Webinars 2020, Session 11. My name is Gregg and I'll be your host today. Before we start, can I check if all of you can hear me well? Please tap OK or yes in the chat box. Thank you. Thanks. I got your response. This free webinar series is held by BUS with the participation of VLT experts and invited speakers from well-known publishers such as Oxford University Press, Macmillan Education, Cambridge Assessment English, National Geographic Learning, Publications, and eFuture. We hope to bring you the most updated and practical teaching methods and techniques so that you can teach your class more effectively. So thank you for joining us in today's webinar, Paving the Way by Closing the Soft Skills Gap, presented by Mr. Gregg Sotiropoulos from Publications. Please be informed that we will have the Q&A session at the end of the webinar. Also, during that time, I will send you the links for you to complete a survey and to download your certificate of participation. And now let me introduce to you Mr. Gregg Sotiropoulos. Over to you, Gregg.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I also need to do a sound check on my behalf. Can everyone hear me clearly? If you could just write it in the chat box. Yes. Excellent. Okay. So let's get to it, shall we? Soft skills and the soft skills gap. Right now, I want us to reflect on a question that I'm going to ask you, okay? And that is, how many of you would like to be successful? It may seem like an easy question, but what exactly is success? First, for us as a teacher, and secondly, in the eyes of our students. Do our students really try to their fullest potential to give their all in each and every class when we're teaching them? I think that sometimes students don't really understand why they're learning the language. So what we want to do today is kind of veer off from content learning and focus a little bit more on some skill sets that not only we as teachers need to develop, but also indirectly start implementing these skills into our classrooms. Because as I had mentioned before, our students are what we call future global agents of change. And these agents of change need to be prepared for anything that comes before them in their future. That being said, it's not just enough to have them with content knowledge. They also need to have a very solid skill set. So in being successful, we have to realize that in this ever-changing society, in this ever-changing world, with demographics, with the economy, with technology, with the way that the world is changing with energy consumption and our lifestyles, the soft skills that I'm going to discuss with you today, and there are many out there, and I basically chose those that out of researching and talking to various professionals, found that this list that I'm going to share with you are the targeted skill sets that they are looking for in future employees, which are our students, and also what we as teachers need to have in our professional development career as educators. So as the world is changing from every aspect, we need to realize that there are two types of skills that surround us. there are hard skills and soft skills. Okay, we've heard these terms before. And what happens is we have this kind of like a recipe, all right, of mixing some of the hard skills and some of the soft skills in our character, in our personality, and in our professional life. So what exactly are hard skills and soft skills? Which one of these are teachable abilities? If you can just write in the chat box what you think is a teachable ability, a hard skill or a soft skill? What would you think? It's a hard skill. Personality traits, where would that go? Personality traits, a hard skill or a soft skill for a personality trait? Soft skill. Technical ability. If someone has a technical ability, what is that, a hard or a soft? It's a hard skill. Behaviors and habits. In which category do we place that? Soft skills, very good. Transferable across careers and also industries, different sectors. Hard skills or soft skills? Soft skills. What can be easily measured? A person's hard skill or a person's soft skill? They're hard skills, the content, yes? Abilities not unique to any job. It's a soft skill. Subjective, fuzzy, and somewhat unreliable. Now, I'm quoting this from somewhere. They're considered soft skills. All right. So there are many different definitions and explanations that revolve around hard and soft skills. Now, which are acquired in the classroom? Hard skills or soft skills? Hopefully by the end of this presentation and in your future teaching, you will be implementing both in your classroom. Okay, so it goes towards the hard skills, but I want you to realize that it can go both ways. But wait a second. I want to share with you what soft skills are not. They are not subjective, fuzzy, vague, and maybe even unreliable. Okay, this is what people think about soft skills, and it is the incorrect interpretation of what they are. What they are teachable abilities. You can teach soft skills in your classroom, and they are acquired by your students through you in the class. Soft skills are global, okay, and they're usually divided into three subsections. The first is people skills, also social skills, and also personal career traits, okay. In this quarantine period, we have seen that those who really focus and have learned soft skills are more effective in engaging their students, okay, and in interacting through social media and through online instruction. When going back to the classroom though, I want us to take into consideration just how important the skills that I'm going to share with you are to implement them throughout your curriculum, to discuss with your colleagues, to discuss with your coordinator and your principal, to start implementing these concepts, okay? This particular visual prompt is something that is near and dear to my heart. It's one of my favorite visual prompts regarding interactions, relationships, and what soft skills are. Our students are future global agents of change. Okay, this is what I coined them. They have superpowers. And with superpowers, right, with superheroes and superpowers, we have also limitations. Our students' superpowers need to be nurtured. These particular powers are going to make them stronger for their future. Okay, as you can see in this visual prompt, the tall man is the teacher, helping his or her student, let's say, giving them the knowledge-based hard skills and also the soft skills. I want us to think of soft skills as superpowers, okay? And I want our students to start to use these superpowers in the classroom and throughout school. So here's the list of some of these soft skills that we're going to talk about today. Number 1, communication. Number 2, leadership. Number 3, empathy. Number 4, the skill of it's a tongue twister. Adaptability. In order to adapt in situations that you're not used to, as we happen to go through with this quarantine period globally with coronavirus. The ability to adapt was not easy for many, many people. Using critical thinking, it is a soft skill. It is a people skill. Collaboration and creativity. Now, these last 3, we have seen as 21st century skills, as some of the 4 C's. Yes, we have been bombarded with thinking of these 3 out of the 4 C's as a 21st century skill. But I like to put them under the soft skills category. So let us begin with the superpower number 1 of communication. What is one of our students, I should say, biggest fear in the classroom when it comes to English? What is one of their biggest fear, ladies and gentlemen? To ask a question, absolutely. And in asking a question, to express their ideas, absolutely. 100% correct. But in doing this, in asking a question, in expressing ideas, what do they have to do? They need to speak, right? They need to talk. And in doing so, as someone else just mentioned, they're afraid of making mistakes when communicating. So the 2 pillars of the English language, okay, of society and interacting is listening and speaking. All right. And so communication, I put that as number 1, simply because I think it is the umbrella skill that everyone needs to master. Students need to understand that their communication is their key superpower, and making mistakes is what we expect, especially in primary school. What we want them to do is to feel comfortable in expressing their ideas. Okay. Now, in communication, yes, feeling comfortable first with themselves and then with those around you. How many of you educators, the people who are on right now, honestly, are sometimes nervous when they're faced in communicating with other people? Maybe you don't have a fully, you don't fully have a good command of the language. Maybe if someone is a native speaker, it kind of hinders your self-esteem, right? We need to put ourselves in our students' shoes and to reiterate just how important it is for speaking and communication. Read your audience and deliver information in a way that resonates with them. So when you communicate with your students, when you communicate with colleagues, you have to look at their nonverbal body language. Sometimes when we're in the classroom and we're talking and teaching and we think it's going super well, right? We're in our zone. If we don't take that time out to observe our students, in actuality, your communication is not being effective because you're not reading your audience. That's part of communication. Authenticity through your verbal and non-verbal body language. You need to be authentic with what you say and how you say it. One example is when a student does a good job or answers in a very, very good way a question. And we say, oh, that was a good try. Excellent. Good. And you continue. That way of how you positively reinforced that student did not really show your authenticity. Okay. It didn't really show that you meant what you said. So in communication, you have to remember that feeling comfortable is key. Making mistakes is what we expect sometimes. To read your audience, to be authentic in your communication. And storytelling. Now, storytelling can change an interaction in a heartbeat. Sometimes, in my experiences, when I've been talking with teachers or doing a convention or an event, I would see that some of my audience is not quite either getting what I'm saying or they're kind of uncomfortable. You could see it in their nonverbal body language. That's where you just pop in a story. And storytelling is also a sub-skill of communication. In your class, when you tell a story, students change their attention towards you as the speaker. So we can look at comfort, reading your audience, authenticity, and storytelling as little powers under the superpower of communication. Now, some tips that I can help you with in communicating are the following. Sometimes your character is to jump right in and talk, all right? Some of us are like that. If you do have this type of character, you need to take a second, take a step back and reserve what you're saying in the moment. Wait, breathe, and reflect before you speak. Okay. That uncomfortable silence that you are feeling is very, very important for the next communication that you're going to deliver with the people that are in front of you. Taking the time to process can ease those around you and help you direct your message even more. So if people know that this is your character to jump in and just start talking, when you do this wait, breathe, and reflect exercise, the people around you who you are interacting with, such as colleagues and students, will relax a little bit, waiting to and anticipate listening to you to see what you're going to say. I'm a big fan of quotes, and this particular quote is something that is very important, is that communication skills in the workforce is 80%, okay, that focuses on job success. And as we said at the beginning, how many of us want to be successful? In order to be successful, you need to first and foremost work on your communication skills, okay? Communication is the real work of leadership. It is. To be a leader means that you really need to understand how to listen to your students. Now, in sharing with you that word, to listen, in order to listen, what you have to be? You have to be silent. And if you look at the two words, listen and silent, we see that both words have the same letters in it. So a great leader is also one who listens to those around them. And don't we want to make our students the future leaders? I would say yes. That being said, the next superpower is leadership. And leadership, you can see leadership qualities in many of your students. And we as teachers need to role model leadership qualities in the classroom. Okay. So for superpower number 2, a leader is someone who can look at the big picture. You don't get stuck on specifics. All right. You know exactly how to guide a group to work together as a team towards a common vision. Now, when we're doing online lessons, we're teaching to the entire class, let's say on Zoom, for example. In doing so, you're looking at the big picture. You're looking at the entire class. But what you need to do then is to see how you're going to break down the team, the class, into sub-teams. All right. Breakout rooms, breakout chats, breakout teams in the platform. And what you do after that as a leader is you delegate what they're going to do and you facilitate what each group is doing, going in and listening. The same has to do with the classroom. That I want you to look at your lesson plan, to look at the semester as the big picture. And I want you to try to implement in your curriculum how to focus a little bit on how to make your students more effective leaders in the classroom. Tell powerful and meaningful stories to inspire, motivate, and keep your students' ambitions high. This is what a leader does. Now, to motivate our students is very difficult. To inspire them constantly is very difficult, and to keep their ambitions high is sometimes impossible day to day. But again, let's look at the big picture. We can say to each other that in the week, this is what I want to achieve with my class. In motivating a class, if you have a class of 30 students, I'm not saying you have to motivate them all throughout the entire lesson. But as long as at some point during the lesson, there is that spark of motivation, then you're showing leadership qualities. Okay. You are your student's role model. This is what a leader does. He is a role model to their students. And when you see a student who is, let's say, the popular student in the class, he or she may also have some of these leadership qualities. Okay. Integrity revolves around being a good leader. All right. Can we nurture these sub-skills in leadership in the classroom? Absolutely. How can we do it? Let me show you some tips. Sometimes as a leader, we take the credit when things go well, okay? But what we need to look at is operating incognito, to give others the spotlight when there is an opportunity. So what does that mean? In your classroom, you should take a step back and put the spotlight on your students. I saw this with my son's class. My son is 6.5, he's in 1st grade. And in one of his Zoom lessons, he knew the answer to a question. He rose his hand and the teacher called on him. He opened up his mic. At the same time, another student opened up his mic and called out the answer. The teacher belittled the other student, and my son said, no, that's okay. He said, it was the right answer. It was what I was going to say. He said, good job, Dimitri. And I turned and I said to myself, this is a 6.5-year-old showing leadership qualities by doing what? By looking at his friend and allowing the spotlight to go on him, even though what he did was not right because of the rule of he didn't raise his hand. My son did not say, hey, you know, and start an argument with him. He allowed that. As a leader, we must take the brunt of when things go wrong. So in our classroom, when things don't go right, what do? Do we sometimes point the finger and put the blame on others? Or do we look in the mirror and evaluate our performance and say, what can I do to make it better because I was the one in charge? When students are responsible for something, what do they do in the classroom? Do they turn around and put the blame on everything around them? Or are they accountable for their actions? Accountability. This is what we need to start teaching in the classroom. Making students accountable for the work they do and the work they don't do. So as a leader, when we take the brunt of when things go wrong, it is called accountability. But let's take a look in this visual prompt, how accountability has changed over the years. You see, ladies and gentlemen, this drives me absolutely crazy. Back in the day when we were kids and we went home to our parents with a bad grade or that we did not perform well in school, our parents looked at us and said, it is our fault. Yes? And the repercussion to this was, you are not going to go out to play with your friends. You're not going to skateboard. You're not going to ride your bike. You're not going to do anything fun until you get your grades up. So our parents back in the day were showing us this soft skill of leadership and accountability. But now what's happening is when a student doesn't do well in a classroom, they come to us all together and they say that you are the problem why my child is not doing well in school. How many of us have been faced in this new situation as a teacher? How many of us in the chat box? If you could just give me a shout out. And some people are laughing. Yes. It's true though. All right. So if we begin to promote and implement, excuse me, the superpower of leadership and beneath that, accountability, let's see step by step, baby steps, how things are going to change with our future global agents of change. Because in my eyes, the future global agents of change should not be like this. Those leaders are not like this, but we need to make more of them in the classroom. Empathy, the third superpower. Empathy is something that society has forgotten. To sense what others need and how they are feeling. The amount of, let's say, lack of empathy that I have seen through this quarantine period has at some points made me very sick to my stomach. Our students through this quarantine period have been restricted to their homes, their home settings. They are bombarded with negativity on the news, on the internet, and on social media. They are hearing things from their parents and from their friends. And so they're becoming somewhat numb to what was and what could be in the future. In empathy, we have to masterfully read the body language to understand what people are thinking. So our students now, as we see them through a camera, are thinking many different things, but we cannot understand exactly what they're thinking because we cannot see them in a school setting throughout the day to really reflect and analyze what's going on and to talk to them about it. If you are empathic, you can build new relationships quite easily, putting yourself in the other person's shoes. Students who start to understand the concept of empathy are not only easier, they are not only in a position to build new relationships in school easily, but they can reinforce relationships that they have with their friends by being empathic. The same goes with us as teachers in collaborating with our colleagues. If you are empathic, you allow others to feel heard and understood. To feel heard and understood. How many people need to get things off their chest, to talk to someone about things that are going on in their lives, and to have that person really listen to them? A leader. In order for a leader to be well-rounded, they have to have great communication skills and be empathic. When you are empathic, people begin to trust you. And the lack of trust that's circulating globally is unbelievable. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pinpoint things that are lacking in our interactions with our students, in our interactions with other people, and to have us after this webinar to sit back and to reflect on some of the key points and the superpowers and the tips that I've given you, to say to ourselves, am I doing this? Am I doing this enough? Do I need to rewire my mindset and my curriculum and my interactions with my students? Maybe. So the tips that I give you for empathy are to listen very carefully. Listen to yourself on how you're feeling about what's going on around you. You may lose sight of your own point of view, because if you're focusing too much on other people's perspectives, you may, let's say, lessen who you are, your authentic self. So be careful with this. Please read between the lines of what is being said and what is being acted upon. This particular quote here I want to focus on for a moment. So let me just move the chat box to the side. How many times have your students said to you, "Oh, I'm just kidding"? Or you have heard students say to their friends, "I'm just kidding"? How many times have we said that to a friend, a family member, and a colleague? How many times has a student said, "Oh, I don't care"? How many times have a student said, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm okay, I'm fine"? There's truth behind just kidding. Maybe they weren't kidding. Maybe that hurtful comment was the truth. In "I don't care," there's emotions behind that. Why don't they care? What is going on behind that I don't care? And maybe there's pain behind a student saying, I'm fine, leave me alone. And also with our colleagues and our friends and our family. So we need to read between the lines. Don't lose sight of who you are and your point of view by being too overly empathic. And listen carefully to yourself and how you feel. Emotions. Emotions make or break an interaction. Emotions make or break sometimes even a lesson in being effective and efficient. How many times have we as teachers allowed our emotional side to overpower how we teach, how we react to a situation, not only in class, but outside of class, in your personal life? To control these emotions, to understand these emotions, to use these emotions in bettering your empathic self. The next superpower is adaptability. Now, this here is something that pertains to our current situation. To be adaptable means you are flexible and able to respond in real time to changes that are happening to you. How many of you in the chat box, when this pandemic affected your region, how many of you had difficulty in adapting? How many of you had difficulty in adapting? I know I did. I know I did, and my family did, and all those around me did. And that's part of being reactive and proactive and having this type of mindset. In adaptability, you cannot be thrown off your game. So if you are very, very concrete in this soft skill of adapting to situations, no matter what happens, you can't be thrown off your game. You're focused, you're proactive. Curveballs are exciting opportunities for you to change the course. This is an opportunity now to change the course of not only in education, but in our interactions with people, in really sitting down and looking at what we have taken for granted all these years, what we should be focusing on now in our schools, in our students, okay? And looking at things by examining them and saying, the normal that we were used to living in, will never exist again. It's the truth. There will become a new norm in humanity, in society. A lot of people are nervous about this, but in adaptability, what you do is you take this unknown and you work it to your benefit. So I'm really curious to see how people are going to use this to their benefit in their schools and with their students. You got to work with what you got. This is real New York. It's a New York. What you got? It's a New York phrase, right? You got to work with what you got. You can't say, I can't do something because I don't have the necessary let's say, components, or I don't have the advantages to do certain things. You work with what you have and you do the best job you can with what you have. That's all we're asking. In doing so, you will be successful in what you're trying to do. Okay. So here's a tip. Here are some tips for adaptability. You may quickly abandon a plan and change direction based on new information that you are given, but be careful to please critique the new information. All right. So many people had said, oh, well, you know, we're all going to go online and use platforms, and it's going to be the best way to communicate with children and with our students, and let's do it because everyone else is doing it. But then something happened, and I always use my kids as case studies. My daughter's teacher jumped on Zoom, right? All the kids went on Zoom, pretty basic. In one lesson, something happened to my daughter's laptop. For some reason, it just went on the spritz, right? And she says, doesn't work. What did she say to me? I don't have class. Can't get in. Nope. So I had a plan B. I said, how many apps are there on the internet that people can communicate with one another? A plethora of apps, right? I said to my daughter, okay, go on Facebook Messenger. She doesn't have a Facebook page. She has Messenger. Go on Messenger and call your friend Eva, who's in the class right now. Video call her. She video called her friend. And how we organized it was, she turned her phone, Eva turned her phone to look at the screen of Zoom. And so my daughter was having her class on her phone, on her Messenger, looking at the screen through Eva's Messenger. Okay. Always have a plan B and a plan C in whatever you're doing. Sometimes staying the course will help you avoid running in circles. So what I don't want you to do is, if you are on a good path, if something is working for you, if you're working with what you got, and all of a sudden this new information comes out, and you say, ooh, let me try it, and you veer off your path, that may not be the best decision. Okay? Stay the course if it's working well. That plan C is always to be prepared. And that plan C has to be totally different than A and B. How many times have we been teaching our students and something wasn't working? We went to a plan B that was similar to plan A, and we said, oh, that's also not working. Go to a plan C that is in a total different direction and use it. All right. You need to see how to adapt to your situation in the lesson in order to constantly have your students there with you. Okay. In this pandemic that we're in, reflecting on what's happening now, okay, it's very important. Charles Darwin said, it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It's the one that is the most able to adapt, to change. This, ladies and gentlemen, is us. This has to be us right now, and our children. Okay. We have heard, professors and gurus on disease control and the economy and this and that and the other. If you cannot adapt to change, that's it. We're finished. And so, does a soft skill come in handy for teachers, students, and parents? Can this superpower of adaptability help us in going back to having face-to-face teaching? Let's think about that for a minute. When we go back to school, are you going to be teaching the same way you did before? Just curious. Will you be teaching the same way? Or will you be making some changes based on what is going on now and what you foresee in the future? I don't know. I'm just asking. It's food for thought. Okay. Some people have already made the changes. Excellent. Good. And those changes have to be part of the new norm. Okay. Critical thinking. In critical thinking, we cut through all of this information and make complex connections between ideas, and we find new unexpected paths. You establish what's wrong. In using our critical thinking skills, that's when we say, okay, they may say this, but I believe this is what's wrong. You read between the lines, okay? In doing all of this, you guide your peers to an answer or a solution. So if you're a leader and you use critical thinking skills, right? If your students are able to use their critical thinking skills, then what happens is they are going to assist those around them in finding an answer or a solution to a problem or to a question or to a project or to a task. Some students, when being asked to do something, they continue through a process of A, B, C, D, E. Students who, and people who use critical thinking skills may say, okay, we go from A to E, but we're wasting too much time on C. So maybe we can limit the time spent on C and use more time on D. And if you look at it even deeper, you may say, we don't even have to use D. We can go A, B, C, and get to E without D. Okay. In using their critical thinking skills, some tips that we can use are the following. People may often come to you for answers. All right. Because if you're a critical thinker, it means, well, okay, they always have the answer. The way they think is different. Wait, breathe, and reflect. Wait a minute. Wait, breathe, and reflect. How did that, where have we seen that before? It was in another tip that I gave you. And the reason why we should do this is because then we will not be quick to jump to solutions. Okay. Ask more questions so the people around you have their aha moments. Aha moments. Many times people who are critical thinkers are those who find the answers. Many times students who get what you're saying about grammar and about various concepts of English, they are what I call the monkeys in the classroom. When they go, oh, 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 miss, or on online teaching, you hear them, miss, sir, miss, sir. And so as a teacher, as a role model, as a leader, we need to show these students that before you do that, you need to wait, breathe, and reflect, and allow others to have their aha moments for them to come up with the answer. One key element of critical thinkers is that they are always curious. Now, my son, when it comes to learning Greek, has a lot of gaps because he's bilingual. But he is extremely curious in how things work. So I believe that as he is by far a critical thinker, it just takes time for him to develop and to advance himself in his lessons. We as teachers need to be aware of that, okay? Creativity, having the ability to imagine and devise new innovative ways of doing what? Of addressing a problem, answering questions, expressing meaning, thinking outside the box. It's so important now for us to please think outside the box on how we teach. Problems are going to arise when we go back to school. Address them. Questions are going to be asked by your students. Answer them. Now, my allergies have been killing me these past days. I apologize. Expressing meaning. To be creative on how something is expressed. Grammar, the inductive approach, the deductive approach. When giving too many rules, you are not allowing your students to be creative. Give some examples and have them find the rules. Allow that creativity and critical thinking to thrive, ladies and gentlemen. There is no black and white. Years ago, we were living in the black and white. Now we're living all in the gray. Sky is the limit. Sky is the limit. Every time I do talks and conventions and TESOL events, etc., I always say, please stop being either here or here. Come in the middle and hang out in the gray. Because that's where all the magic happens in education and in life itself. So here are some tips for creativity. As Albert Einstein said, creativity is intelligence having fun. Interesting. Creativity is intelligence having fun. The more creative you get with your lessons, the more fun your students are going to have. Okay, so that being said, people who are creative are looked up to in producing a new idea, a new outlook. I never thought about it like that, right? Having those around them that say, oh, wow, I never thought of it like that. Helping your peers to understand your thought process about your idea and how to execute it. Helping your peers to understand your thought process. You may have a great idea, but if you don't have the people around you understand the process of how you're thinking, how is it going to be executed? You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. Very interesting quote by an amazing book. As our future global agents of change are being labeled as the wired generation, okay, they're all on the internet, being bombarded with all of these apps and games and things that are distracting them from capitalizing on their creative instincts. This is how I believe this is what's happening. And why is it happening? We must challenge them on a weekly basis on how to ignite their creative awareness. They are so unbelievably intelligent and creative, but we are not giving them that opportunity in class. Enough of it, at least. And when I have my kids try to do things that have nothing to do with technology, they look at me like this. What are we going to do? I'm bored. Come on. Food for thought. Collaboration. Collaboration as a skill. It's a superpower to collaborate with others. How do superheroes do it in all of those movies that they play in? In collaborating, you are a master of teamwork. You get the best out of all of those around you when you are able to collaborate. You recognize not only the strengths in others, but also their limitations. And so those strengths, you have them shine individually. It is a we as opposed to I. In education, there is no I. It is all about we, the teachers, the faculty, working as one. You know when to step up and also when to take 2 steps back. Collaborating with each other for the betterment of your school and your students. You're being a great partner with those around you. It's all about being that, right? So here are some tips. When collaborating, always consider the following. The cultural background of those that you are collaborating with. The level of experience that they have. The professional profile. The emotional state that they are in. Timing is always key. Now, when you have students collaborate with one another and work with one another in teams, you also have to consider certain things about the students that you mix and match to collaborate in teams. Their strengths, their limitations, their emotional state, biases. These are all things that you must consider in order to collaborate effectively. For every fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. Now, how are these animals going to collaborate? Which animal is going to be able to do this without even batting an eye? Obviously, it's going to be the monkey. But in collaborating all together, can all of these animals climb the tree? Now, I gave this to a class of high school kids when I was visiting a country a couple of months ago. And the interpretation that they had was unbelievable. I'm going to share it with you just for a moment on collaboration. To climb the tree means what? It means the goal is to reach the top, some part of the top of the tree. Yes, the monkey could go up to the top of the tree, but to make this fair, how can they collaborate so all of them do it? So they said to me, okay, the elephant is going to help to push the tree down as far as it can. So the roots come out and the tree gets pushed down. That means what? That the dog may be able to climb up on one of the branches. That the elephant can help the seal and the penguin go on top. The bird will just fly on a branch. And the monkey is the only one that can take the goldfish bowl and place it on the branches. So technically, did they climb the tree? Yes, in some way, because the end result was to reach the top. And so these students were sitting and discussing, using their critical thinking skills and their creativity and their collaboration, on how all of these animals can reach the same goal. But before I finish, I just want to give you something else. Out of these 7 soft skills, which one do you feel resonates with you the most? For example, for myself, I have the soft skill of leadership. Out of all of these, the leadership for me is what resonates when someone meets me. So we have critical thinking, creative. So these are the soft skills that resonate in you. Okay. Anyone else? Share with us. I'm very curious to see, out of these 7, adaptability, leadership, okay, and critical thinking, and creativity. But if we could pick one, empathy, sometimes adaptability, okay? Who else? Empathy, communication, creativity. This is interesting. Communication. Very few, okay, here we go. 2 and 4, leadership and adaptability. Very few have been saying leadership. And I find that very interesting. Communication, creativity. So let's think about this. I did not put these in any particular order of importance or which one should be worked on first. But many of you have put the last one, creativity, as the one that resonates inside of you. Now, maybe because of this current situation, the skill of creativity is being used more now than we used to. I don't know. Many of you have said communication. Also, communication is being used more because we are out of this comfort zone of communicating online with our students. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there for food for thought, for reflection. So, ladies and gentlemen, do not become preoccupied with your child's academic ability, but instead teach them to sit with those sitting alone. Teach them to be kind. Teach them to offer help. Teach them to be a friend to the lonely, to encourage others, to think about other people, to share, to look for the good in others and in themselves. This is how they are going to change the world. Hard skills and soft skills. Teaching them the language and teaching them skill sets, superpowers, to make them be the best that they can be for their future and in their lives. Thank you very, very much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking with you. I believe we're now open for questions and answers.
Yeah. When it comes to the Q&A session,
should be doing.
Yeah. Anyone have any questions? Please type it in the Q&A box. Thank you.
Let me open up the Q&A box. Okay, Q&A box. You're very welcome. Thank you very much for your patience and your time. Thank you. Thank you very, very much. If you have any questions, I'm not, I'm not in any rush. If I need to answer this question honestly, Do you think that sometimes school kills creativity? Yes, I do believe sometimes it does. I think that the curriculum in a school sometimes does not allow students to really nurture that creative side. All right. But we as teachers can often restructure our lesson for the week and allow creativity to be used. Maybe not a little bit every day, but we can set aside some days of the month for creative activities. How can we teach accountability? This is how I taught accountability to my students. All students like to be praised for things that they do well. To be accountable, to be responsible for their actions means that when they do something well, we must praise them in a way that makes them want to do it again, but do it a little bit better. The same does not work with if they don't do something well, that we punish them or that we belittle them and we do it again if they do it constantly. If they are not accountable for working hard, getting good grades, being polite, having good communication, being respectful, so on and so forth, what we do is we show through example why their action is not acceptable. And doing that, we can do it through storytelling. I always use my father, and my mother as examples on how they raised me with my kids. And if they don't do something right, I ask them, how would you like it if this situation happened to you or to someone else? It takes time to teach accountability, but it does work. All right. Now, we're having questions now in both. Sorry, and in the chat box. Is it correct to expect students to have high academic achievements, but their children have some intellect limitation? What do we do to help parents understand the soft skills are important? Yes, parents always have different expectations for their students. First of all, they all think their students are the best. They all think their students have the right. They all think their students should be given A's. That is a problem because in the triangular relationship of education, as I discussed in other webinars, we have the student, we have the parent, and we have the teacher. And the missing angle, the link, is always the parent. So what we can do here is the bar should not be 100% in class. I believe that students should not, 100 shouldn't be the best. 90 should be the benchmark for the best, right? So what does that mean? That you're giving the opportunity for lower performing students to reach the best mark, 90. These parents who want their kids to be high academic achievers, you're giving a 10%, a 10-point extra credit for those kids to work more, those higher achievers, right? The higher performing students. These soft skills, right? Why are they important? How do we explain this to students and parents? First question is, why are your students, why are your kids learning English? Because they have to. Because they want to? Not very often. The second question is, what do you want to do in life? What do the kids want to do in life? What are their dreams? What are their aspirations, right? They want to be an engineer, a doctor, a police officer, a TikTok star, an Instagrammer, YouTuber, who knows, right? Then we bridge this gap and we say, okay, why is English important? What do you want to do? How is English, how are soft skills going to help you to be the best that you want to be in life? And so the students are going to say, wait a minute. And parents should say, wait a minute. There's a purpose why English and these particular skills and qualities and people skills are important. What was the first slide I showed you guys? The first slide I showed you was what? How many of you want to be successful? Now, successful is not just about money. It's about being happy in life. So all of these things are going to help them to be successful in life. That's how I would explain it. If you see a question that I can't see, help me out, because I've
yeah, we have three questions so far. There's a question in the chat box. Gregg?
Yes.
Yeah, from John Rich. There's a question.
Yes, I want to learn something from you. What is the question? Wait a minute. Lack of collaboration. To help with lack of collaboration. Is that the one you're referring to? From John Rich?
I think so.
Okay. A lack of collaboration starts with the coordinator and the principal of the school. The coordinator or the principal of the school is the leader with whom the teachers communicate with, and therefore he or she has to really enforce collaboration among others. If some teachers are not collaborating effectively, then that means that he or she is the weak link in having the faculty work at the, let's say, not capacity, but at the level that they should. I've had this in many experiences in Latin America, the Middle East, and in Asia. That, in every school, there are sometimes teachers that do not want to be on board with what is being implemented or discussed. Those teachers need to really have a one-on-one discussion with someone that they can trust. And in doing so, if we see that there is no change in their mindset, and I'm sorry for saying this, but it's the truth. I've said this to many teachers. They have to go. You see, a teacher that does not collaborate with other teachers to move ahead as a united front is detrimental to the success for students in the school. How long does it take to master these 7 soft skills? A lifetime. It takes a lifetime. I'm serious, Lily. It takes a lifetime. Because no one can master anything. No one is perfect, right? I can always improve your perfection. There's always room for improvement. So I think that, you know, it takes baby steps at the beginning, and then you just continually develop these type of skills. For example, in communication, I've been told that I'm a very good communicator. When I started doing webinars, I never did webinars before this quarantine period. I'm being honest with you now. And I did a couple of, you know, sample webinars with my colleagues, and it sucked. I'm sorry. It was really bad. I was horrible. I was stuck in this little box. I didn't know how to do it, how to communicate. And so it took some time for me to learn how to communicate online. And I'm still trying, you know, I'm still uncomfortable at times talking with you, because I like to see your nonverbal body language. I like to interact and walk around, right? So it takes time.
Is there a question in the Q&A box?
Q&A box. Hold on, wait a minute. Can you measure the effectiveness of teaching soft skills? The effectiveness of the outcome, right? How to measure the outcome of teaching soft skills in students. It's looking at how your students interact with one another, how they perceive the lessons that are being given to them, how they go about doing their homework, how they interact with you as the teacher. And there's not a concrete measurement to see how, you know, with numbers and statistics, but it's a feeling. It's knowing your students well enough before and after, all right, to see this change in your students. You see, soft skills is not something that you should consider to be measurable. It's something that you should implement, and it comes out natural after a while. Okay. Oh, 6. Oh.
Is there any more questions?
I don't know. Okay, I'm trying to read all the chat box because
Yeah.
there was a lot.
Rick just shared with us some notes that he took from your presentation.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, guys, that what we need to look at here is that the way teaching is being looked at globally, I think there needs to be some restructuring in how we are developing our students. I think that we need to really have a synergy of having our students work on themselves also in school. You know, I think that our students should be given the opportunity to really grow as an individual in school, rather than just have this stress and anxiety of learning content and getting the grade. Okay. Can you please clarify superpower number 3 when teaching online? Okay. I mean, we can't see our. So, superpower number 3 of empathy. Okay. Yes. Yes. When teaching online, if you have one-on-one time with your students, okay, yes, empathy. Please try to make some time in speaking to your students one-on-one, not about English. And when you speak to them one-on-one, then it's just you and them in the screen. You sit back, right, more than arm's length away, and you have a conversation with your student. There, you can see their nonverbal body language, right? Not as much as you would see in the class, but just have a heart-to-heart with them, okay? And see how they're doing. Empathy doesn't need to be worked on as a whole sometimes. You could do it one-on-one, okay? You're welcome. So I think, is there anything else?
Okay. I think we don't have any more questions.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, John. That was good. Thank you very much for that comment. Wow. Thank you, sir.
VUS, your English, your future.